This video about genetics, which will take you through a journey about genetics, a brief description about genetics. So let's start it. So the genetics is actually the life code or the code of our life, and this is the thing which is the secret of our life. With genetics, with the knowledge of genetics, anyone can control someone's life, someone's structure, someone's characteristics, and everything at all. So what are genetics? When you look at on the word genetics, we'll see another word called genes. So what are genes? Where is this located? Is our first question. So if you look at a cell, a simple cell, not a neuron cell, you'll always find something which is called nucleus. Often this is at the center of the cell, but sometimes this may be at the corner. However, this strange thing, nucleus, has some special things in this. You see some scrambled elements in this. This is called the nuclear reticulum. And this nuclear reticulum in nucleus holds something else, which is called chromosomes. And this chromosomes is the shelter or the home of nucleic acids like DNA. Often DNA, sometimes this may be RNA. However, and this DNA RNA is actually the code for our life. The DNA sequence of the nitrogen bases in a DNA sequence forms genes. What did I told? The nucleic acids like DNA and the nitrogen bases in a DNA sequence forms genes. So in the chromosomes, there are nitrogen bases in DNA sequences, and the nitrogen bases in a DNA sequence forms genes. So what are nitrogen bases? What is DNA sequence, or what is nucleic acid? What is DNA or RNA? However, there are many more questions in our mind, and in this video we'll answer all of these questions one by one. So let's dive into our second question. What is nucleic acid? So let's start from the very basics and the very clear explanation. So what is nucleic acid? Actually, what is nucleic acid? You may know. So here you may notice two words, which is DNA and RNA. And here I have told that this is nucleic acid. So what is nucleic acid? This is maybe your first question. What is nucleic acid? So nucleic acid is exactly which is behind for our life, or the characteristics of everyone. As nucleic acid is mainly divided into two kinds. One of them is DNA. You have heard about this many more times, I think. And another one is RNA. This is not so familiar or not so popular yet, but this is very important. So DNA and RNA actually is a nucleic acid, and yes, they have some differences. If we extract the meaning from the word DNA, we will find this. So DNA means deoxyribo. So deoxyribonucleic acid. So D means deoxyribo and N means nucleic acid. So DNA means deoxyribonucleic acid. And on the other hand, RNA means ribonucleic acid. So R means ribo and N means nucleic acid. So RNA means ribonucleic acid. And in the animals' organs, which have multiple cells in this, contains most of the times the DNA. So the DNA is present in the animals which have multiple cells, but often animals which have single cell also contain DNA. So where is RNA? Actually, where is RNA located? This is your question, right? So if you look at a virus, you will see the ribonucleic acid or RNA. So in a virus, there is actually a protein and a nucleic acid, and most of the virus have RNA, ribonucleic acid, and this is exactly where we find RNA. So now you have understood the concept of DNA and RNA, and you know where this is located. From the last slide, you have understood that DNA and RNA is located in chromosomes, and now we'll know what is the structure or what is inside DNA. So here you are looking, you'll notice something, and this is exactly the structure of a DNA. So here you will notice a spiral structure, and they have something special in them. So what is the structure? What does this mean? What does it have? Is our present question. And DNA, that means deoxyribonucleic acid, is actually built with nucleotide molecule. So check this word, nucleotide molecule. So nucleotide molecule, and this molecule have all the components need to made up the DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid. And the nucleotides actually contain three things: a sugar group, a nitrogen base, I told you about it before in the first slide, and a nitrogen base. So what are the nitrogen bases? And the nitrogen bases are the main thing we have to learn, and the nitrogen bases is actually behind genes, because I said nitrogen bases in a DNA sequence forms genes. So what are the nitrogen bases? So there are 4 kinds of nitrogen bases, and these are expressed like this: is adenine, and this is expressed with the word A. So the first kind of nitrogen base is expressed with the word A, and the second one is guanine, and this is expressed with the word G, and the third one is cytosine, and this is expressed with the word C, that means the first word of these words, and the last one is thymine, and I think you know this is expressed with the word T. So these are the 4 kinds of nitrogen bases in a DNA or in a nucleotide, and the sugar group and the phosphate group is located on the 2 sides of this. So you see this structure of a DNA here. So where is the nitrogen bases? Actually these things are these lines you see here, actually the nitrogen bases, and the sugar group and the phosphate group remains here, here, and here. That means beside the nitrogen bases, their phosphate group and sugar group, and this nitrogen bases and their sequence mainly define the characteristics of an animal. You see. So how they will be arranged one after one will mainly define how will be the characteristics of that animal or of that cell, and their arrangements is the code for life. You may heard about the language of computers, which have only two words in that, which is 0 and 1, and that is almost like this nitrogen bases. Here for the code for life we have only four words, A, G, and C and T, and their arrangements will define how will the cell will work, or what will be the characteristics of that animal. So this is almost like making a new word, right? And this nitrogen bases are joined or in their places, right places, with these two lines, right? But then what are these lines? These are not the phosphate group or the sugar group, or not the nitrogen bases. Then what are these actually? Nucleotide, or these nucleotides, the phosphate group, the nitrogen base, and the sugar group, are attached together to form two long strands. These are the long two strands. This is spiral, right? So this structure here is called double helix, and this is the double helix, and this defines how the pair or the strand will pair with each other, and the base on one strand pair with the base on another strand. That means the nitrogen bases, how will they pair with each other, will be defined by the that means that the adenine will pair with thymine, and the guanine will pair with cytosine. And this is defined by the double helix. And each DNA, or the DNA of our body, the same word is right, that it means the DNA of our body contains 3 billion of nitrogen bases. And do you know what is billion? 100 crore makes 1 billion. That means 300 crore nitrogen bases are present in our body. And the fact is that this nitrogen bases, here you see the arrangement of this nitrogen bases are same 99% of every or all people. That means 99.9%, in 99.9% cases, the arrangement of this nitrogen bases are same in all people. That means the 0.1% difference with me and you, between me and you, differs the characteristics and the structure and the body of me and you. That means only 0.1% difference can cause a great difference in the structure and the characteristics, right? And this is amazing. If you think this with your mind deeply, you will find this very interesting. But here we have only talked about DNA. So what is the work of RNA, right? You notice this in the first slide here. So you have seen something else, RNA. So what is the work of RNA, right? So DNA, the main work of DNA is to ask cell create a protein. So the main work of DNA is actually to ask the cell to work something, or mainly to create a protein. But this is not very easy peasy. The DNA cannot easily ask the cell to create a new protein. This cannot happen like the DNA will go to the cell and say, "Sir, please make some proteins for me. I need this very, very much." So this is not very easy peasy, and in that case, in our body, RNA do the rest work. That means when DNA cannot ask the cell to create a protein directly, the RNA does the work. The RNA translates the genetic instruction from DNA to the cell. That means when DNA give an instruction to create a new protein, which is a genetic instruction, that RNA translates this from DNA to a cell so that the cell can understand what is the DNAs are asking to do. So the work of RNA, you understand that these are not very simple, and yes, our body also contains some RNA because the genetic instructions need to be translated to be happened in our body, and the work is done by the RNA. Human genes, the genes are so long that they cannot fit in a cell without the exact antigen they have in nuclear reticulum. And if we look at those at those DNAs, the small sections of the long chain of a DNA is called a gene, or in another language we can say the nitrogen base in the DNA sequence forms genes. And this is exact, which is expressed in this way, that the small sections of this long chain of the DNA is exactly the gene. So however, the physical and the functional units of heredity is gene. And from the Human Genome Project, it has been known that humans have about 20,000 to 25,000 genes in them. And yes, there are 2 copies of each genes in us, and this 2 copies, or the copies of these genes, we have got the each copy from our each parents. That means the 1 copy of the genes you have got from your mother, and the other copy, the genes you have in your body, you have got it from your father. That means each of your parents. And these genes are very interesting because the main work of this are to ask the cell to create proteins. And sometimes there are some changes in the work of genes, and the changes in the genes is called mutations. And this mutation is very important while you are studying about genes, because this mutation is the secret about many diseases in the world. So this mutation of genes, the mutations prevent one or more of these proteins which are created by the instruction or genetic instruction of genes, and these mutations prevent one or more of these proteins from working properly. And this can lead to disease, a strong disease. Like, so when people are saying that some people have the cystic fibrosis genes, they are usually referring to a mutated version of the CTFR gene. That means if you heard that someone has the cystic fibrosis genes, which is the cause of any disease of the person, that means the person have a mutated version of the CTFR gene. And this is really interesting because here the genes actually does something harmful for your health. That means the code for your life can be harmful for you often. And this mutation is often seen. This can lead to a genetic disease. I've talked about genes, DNA, and RNA, so let's talk something about chromosomes. So the chromosomes is where the nucleic acids are located, and the chromosomes are located in the nuclear reticulum. However, you may know that our body contains 23 pairs of chromosomes. That means 23 pairs means 46 chromosomes in each body, and each of these chromosomes, or each pair of the chromosomes, they have 2 copies, and we got each copy from each parent, like genes. However, so the 22 pairs of these chromosomes are normal chromosomes, but the last pair of the chromosomes, that means the 23rd number of the pair of these chromosomes, is something special. These are called the 6 chromosomes, and this define your gender. So however, I will talk about this later. So let's look on the normal chromosomes, that means the 44 normal chromosomes. So from the first to last, you'll see that the size of these chromosomes has been decreased. So, and this is exactly, you are right, the size of these chromosomes has been decreased from first to last. Like the first chromosome, you have the number 1. The first chromosome contains 249 million DNA base pairs, where the 10th number of chromosome contains only 135 million DNA base pairs. And this has been decreased and turned very little at last. And each of them also contains some of the words or instructs some to create some proteins in our body. And the gender instructions they give to cell mainly defines what type of works they do. But the last chromosome you see here is something very special, because this is called the 6th chromosome, which will define your gender. And there are 2 kinds of 6 chromosome. The first 6 chromosome is X, is called X, and the second is called Y. And the female have 2 copies of X chromosomes, and the male have 1 copy of X chromosome and 1 copy of Y chromosome. That means mainly your father or the male human defines what will be the gender of his sons or daughters. And this is very interesting, because when you are a female, you will have 2 copies of X chromosomes in your body, and if you are a male, you will have 1 copy of X chromosome and 1 copy of Y chromosome in your body. And this number of copies of the chromosomes will define which gender you are. And this is really interesting if you think about the normal chromosomes and then about the 6th chromosome. We have discussed about genes, chromosomes, and many other things. But when you learn these concepts, another concept will easily come, and that's alleles. So what is alleles? What does this mean? I think if you understood the concept of gene, you can easily understand what is allele. So we can define gene in many ways, We can also say that gene is portion of DNA which determines the characteristic in every generation. A characteristic, or this can be, you can say, a feature in every generation. And you know that a gene, not allele, a gene comes in many versions, and simply each version or specific form of gene is called allele. Let me describe this concept. Suppose here's a gene. You have a gene. Let's call it A. Suppose there is a gene. The gene is named A, and this determines that you will have hair. You'll have hair, right? But suppose you have brown hair. Then how is this determined? You will have hair that is determined by a gene. You will have brown hair that is also determined by a gene, but as the color is a person or a specific form, that means you may have different colors of hair. Like someone maybe have brown hair, someone may have black hair, and there are many versions of the hair. And in that case, as that gene which is behind, which is controlling your hair, it should have some specific forms, because it should have different forms, and one of that form is present in your body. Suppose the A gene had different forms, like it have brown color, let's call it B. It have black color, let's call it C. So these different forms that A gene have is called allele. That means the B gene will, if the B gene or the B version of the A gene is present in your body, your hair will be brown, and if the C version of the gene A is present in your body, then your hair will be black. That means each specific form of a gene is called allele. Simply allele. Let me describe in more details. Suppose it is gene. Gene is the expression of traits. Traits mean a characteristic or a feature in your body, in every generation. And allele is simply the variation of traits. That means the variation of gene. Same gene, but each have multiple versions, and each version is called allele. Simply allele. And that is present in everybody. We know that each human or each individual have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and chromosomes means there are DNAs, and DNA means there are genes. 23 pairs, that means 46 chromosomes in total, and each pair, I mean same gene, but you have 2 copies of each gene, and each copy of a gene is called allele. You know that you have 2 copies of every gene, and the copies from copies, and between the 2 copies you have got one from your mother and the other one from your father. That means you have 2 copies of every gene, and the copies of same gene is called allele. That means you have 43 alleles. I'm sorry, you have 46 chromosomes, and the genes, the genes which is present in the chromosomes, you have alleles actually, because each gene have 2 copies, and as the copies are actually the versions of the genes, you have actually allele. Yes, you have gene, but in that case we'll call it allele. Suppose your height is determined by 400 genes. and each gene have different versions, and each version is called simply allele. So when we will come in this concept called allele, we will see some more concepts which is actually very related with allele, and let's talk about that. So when we have understand the concept of allele, let's go through this. So you will hear two words when you're learning the concept allele, and the first one is genotype, and the second word is phenotype. So what are this? This is a question, right? What is genotype or what is phenotype? So let me say, you know that you're the son, or suppose you're a son or daughter of your parents, and your parents have given one copy of their each genes to you. That means you have two copies of each gene, one from your mother and one from your father. That means the genes are passing from one generation to next generation, and when these are passing through the generations, sometimes they have some difference, or sometimes this passing is very interesting. How? When all the genes passed onto an individual by their parents is genotypes. That means the characteristics are determined by genes, and when the genes are passing or have been passed onto an individual by their parents is simply genotype. I will discuss this later. Let me just say the definition of them. And what is phenotype? The set of physical characteristics or feature an individual has is phenotype. So what am I saying? These are very hard, right? But no, this is not very hard. Let me describe. So let me erase this. So suppose your father have given and your mother have given you same gene, and the gene is controlling your height. Suppose your mother is taller and your father is not so taller, is shorter, is a short person. So that means when the genes will pass from the generation to you, from mother you will get a gene which will give you the characteristics of being longer, and from your father you will get a gene which will give you a characteristic of being shorter. And these characteristics which are coming from your father and from your parents to you are called genotypes. And when suppose this is not upon us, suppose your body, or when you have born, your body has taken the gene of your mother, so you will be longer, right? You will have a gene which have the characteristic of being longer. So the set of physical characteristics of an individual, that means the physical characteristic which have come in you, that means being longer, that is called phenotype. That means the characteristics which are coming from your parents is called genotype, and the characteristic which you will have is simply phenotype. Easy, right? Yes, this is very easy if you understand this. And if you think this is not clear to you till now, just pause the video or just listen this part again and again. So when we are talking about genotype, we'll get two more concepts that are homozygous and heterozygous. So let's talk about them. So homozygous and heterozygous, what are them, you may ask me. So let me erase them and let me teach you. So when you have learned the concept genotype, we know the genotypes are the genes passed on to individual by their parents. That means the characteristics which are coming to you from your parents are genotype. So the genotype can be divided into two parts. The first one is homozygous. Let me write this down. Homozygous. And the second one is called the heterozygous. So what are these? If your father and mother have the same characteristics, that means your mother have the characteristics of being longer, that means you have a gene which will make you longer, and your father have also that gene of being longer, that means your father is long and your mother is long, both your parents are long, that means they have a longer height. That means both of your parents have the same characteristic or the same gene, and those genes are coming from them to you. In that case, those genes are simply genotype. That genotype will be called homozygous. That means same genes from each of your parents. And on the other hand, heterozygous is simple. Suppose your mother is not longer, your mother is short in height, and your father is long in height. That means they don't have the same characteristic or same gene about height. They have different kinds of genes, different genes, and those genes are coming from them to you. In that case, those genotypes or the genes which are coming from them to you will be called heterozygous. For science related news, you'll often see the word DNA sequencing. Though this video is not fully related on this technology, but this is important in genetics. However, DNA sequencing simply is the process of determining the nucleic acid sequence, or we can also say that this is the process to determine the order of nucleotides in DNA. And more clearly, we can also say that this is the process where we determine the order of the 4 bases, that means adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine in the DNA. That means how they are arranged in the DNA. This is in the DNA sequencing technology is to find them. That means the arrangement of these bases of the nucleotides in the DNA is very important. But how is that important? Because you may often see the word genome, and what is this, you may ask. Genome or finding genome of a animal or of something, a tree. However, this can be anything. However, the genome is to find the genetic code of that animal or of that plant, because when we can find the genetic code of that, we can easily fix any problem of that thing, of that plant or animal. And the process or the technology we use to find the genetic code or the DNA or the sequence of the bases, the codes of that plants or animals' life is called DNA sequencing. However, you don't need to learn many things about this. but just keep in mind that this technology is not very new. This was started, the first DNA sequence was done in 1970, and that time we used the laborious method, and that was very long method to find the genome code or the DNA sequence in an animal or in a plant. That can took up to 1 year for a harder code or harder sequence. But now we have greater technologies. We use fluorescence based sequencing method. Using a DNA sequencer, we can easily find the DNA sequence of animal or plant. For watching, everyone. I think you have learned something from this video. We have discussed on genes, chromosomes, we have discussed on DNA sequence, we have also discussed on the structure of genes, DNA, nucleic acids, DNA, RNA, and we have also discussed on alleles. We have also discussed on the chromosomes, and all of this come together in genetics, and this is the first video about genetics in our channel. However, if you learned something and enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and comment. And if you have any problem to understand any concept, just comment below. I will answer all of them in within 24 hours. And if you have understood the concept of allele, only allele, if you have understood the concept of allele, just comment below. I will know if you have understood those clearly. Don't forget to subscribe to get notified when new videos are coming for you.